I think in the beginning, we both were out of school or during school, during our masters. So we didn't know so much what we were getting into. And there's a little bit of beauty in that, like you have big things that feel like big challenges, but you have no idea that later you're going to have like even bigger challenges. So if you want to start a startup, don't listen to this part. Be blissful in your ignorance because otherwise you won't keep going, and I mean, I think if someone had told us all the things that will come later, how hard it will be, most likely we wouldn't have continued.
Welcome back to the Fresh Engineer podcast, where fresh engineers share their stories. I'm your host and mechanical engineer Anna Reich, and in today's episode I'm talking to Beatrice Ionascu, who is an electrical engineer with specialization in machine learning from Romania, who studied in Abu Dhabi, New York and Sweden, where she co-founded the startup Imagi right out of university that she is now the CTO of. In our conversation we talk about why she switched her major from biology to electrical engineering, writing her master thesis at Spotify, and why she ultimately decided not to stay there, her passion for getting more women into engineering, and of course what it's been like to grow Imagi and her biggest challenges as a CTO. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did.
I would like to start all the way at the beginning. So where are you from? Where did you grow up? And what were you like as a kid?
So I'm from Romania. I was born in a small city, like 100,000 people. It's called Bistrița. It's close to the mountains, and I miss that a lot, living in Stockholm now. And I think it's a very homogenous community. I've come to realize. So I grew up, with my friends, and it's a small city, not a lot of diversity, I didn't know much about the world outside. But then in high school, I got the chance to do an exchange program, and I went to the States for 1 year in 11th grade. And that was really, really a great experience because it just opened my eyes to how much more there is in the world than my small city.
Where in the US did you go?
I went to Tacoma, Washington. I was in an all-girls school, very different from general public school in Romania, and also very different from, I think, what you see in American media about high school in the US. There was no football team, no cheerleaders, because it was all girls, but it was really great. Yeah, and then I went back to Romania, I think a changed person, and was really excited for what's to come after high school.
And after high school, how did you decide what to do, and which options did you consider?
So I think as part of this exchange program that I did in high school, I realized how a lot of the thoughts or my worries in high school were so small. I had my group of friends, and then you have all the kind of what your friends are doing. But then after the exchange program, I realized that there's universities in the US that might be interesting for me. And I actually wanted to apply to universities abroad. But more specifically, I found out about NYU Abu Dhabi because during my time in high school in Tacoma, we had a lot of different universities come present at the school. And actually one of these presentations was from New York University about this new campus that they were opening in Abu Dhabi. And I was just like, wow, that's so cool. It's I was now in the US, and I felt like I had known or got to know the culture, and it wasn't so different from Europe. So I was like, oh, I'm ready for a new challenge. So I would love to apply there. And then I applied there and got in. That was really exciting.
And you decided to do electrical engineering, right?
Yes, but actually that only happened during university. Mm-hmm. So when I applied to university, I was applying as a biology major. I think, towards the end of high school, if I had stayed in Romania, I think I would have gone to med school, which now in retrospect sounds insane because I'm not really good with blood. But I think in Romania, there's a push for if you're performing well academically, if you're a girl, med school is the right path for you. But I had this interest in biology, which I actually developed while I was in my exchange program in the US, because we did cellular biology and we had proper labs, and it was just wow, this is so interesting. So I thought I wanted to study biology. But then I started university, and it was a liberal arts school, so I could apply with an intended major, so biology, but then I had the option in the first 2 years to change my mind. So as a first year student who is studying STEM, so science, engineering, math, you do have a lot of common courses. So I took those courses, and I took a biology course, and it was really tough. There was so much to memorize, and I was really insecure or unsure whether that was a good path for me. And then on the other other hand, I took some engineering courses that I love. And then I was like, okay, maybe I should actually go back to do something that's more hands-on and practical.
Cool. Do you have any advice for other high school students who are picking what to study and how to make this decision? Maybe if you're already interested in engineering.
I think it's just so important to explore, to try things out, to see what you like. My dad is actually an electrical engineer, and I'm so sad that like we didn't do more things together for me to, like realize earlier on that this is something I was interested in. So in school, I was really interested in math, and I mean, engineering is super tied to math. So for me, that was kind of like always what drew me towards science and engineering. I think, analytical, loved math, but in high school, I think I didn't do enough to like explore my options. And in retrospect, I think that would have been really great. And perhaps if you're in a bigger city or in a school that offers internship programs or even like visits to see what it means to be an engineer or work in a certain field, I really encourage doing that to get a sense of what's out there and what it means to be a scientist and an engineer.
Mm-hmm. What did you find the most challenging about studying engineering?
Physics. Yeah. So I was good at math. I loved math, but somehow I always struggled transferred that into like physics. And then on the other hand, I love doing the hands-on things. So I think about electrical engineering, it's so nice. What I liked a lot is, just building a circuit, seeing how it works. And then eventually I think I would connect the dots from like what I'm trying to do and the math, and then it comes together, and then the physics is somewhere in the middle, I think. But some subjects were really tough for me. And I think the only way I got through them was actually by working together with other students. Like we would sit together and do our homeworks together, prepare for exams together. And that's something I did a lot during university, but not so much in high school. And I was a bit scared of it. Like I think just how I was trained, I wasn't so used to working with others. But I realized that there's so much value in it because you each have different understanding. You can help each other with your like weaker points. And that's just how you work later in life as well. You don't know everything yourself. So it's really nice to be able to get through things together with others by discussing, by explaining to each other. And then you learn better when you also explain to others.
Besides working with others, do you have any other advice for engineering students to make it through their studies successfully?
Sleep. Yeah. Try to get enough sleep, I think. And it's hard. I think time management, learning how to manage your time is so important because you do most likely, I mean, this was my case, but I'm sure in every university or every engineering program, you have a lot of tough courses, but then you need to have a fresh and rested mind in order to be able to get all that information in. And maybe one more thing is trying to apply what you learn if you can. So working on kind of like side projects or, often you have projects as part of school. So I think focusing on those much more than just like memorizing or like learning theory, because then you will actually remember things. There's so much theory I learned in my bachelor that I forgot. And it's the things that I actually tried to do and struggled with. Those are the ones that I feel like I retained better and remembered.
What was the experience like for you to study in Abu Dhabi? Was it different than you expected?
Yes, it was different than I expected. I think that's maybe because, my expectations were, I think, very much shaped by, what you see in the media about like Middle East. So, and I had, beyond that, I really didn't know what to expect. The university was, I think, very American in just academically, like the liberal arts model, a lot of professors from the US, but then at the same time, it was also just very international. There were students from everywhere, and I really loved that because I realized that there's so much I have in common with people from completely different backgrounds, from different parts of the world, and it was just so amazing to have friends from everywhere and like learn not just in the classroom, but also through this experience of being in Abu Dhabi, of meeting people from all over the world. And I think the university was at a little bit of a bubble. I wish I maybe did a bit more to kind of like step out of that and like get to know the local culture more. I tried, and I think I did to some extent, but often it felt like I was just at an American university somewhere in the desert. Yeah, and we were very much focused on our studies. So I think I spent a lot of time really studying and working hard.
How did you then decide what to do next after your bachelor studies?
Honestly, I was confused. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I felt like I got a, good good, let's say, like electrical engineering training, but I didn't like focus in necessarily in anything like electronics or I don't know. There's so many different things you can do within electrical engineering, like power systems. So I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but then as part of the 4-year program at NYU, I got the chance to again study abroad in New York this time. So I was 3 years in Abu Dhabi and 1 year in New York. And that year when I was in New York, I took a machine learning course and I really, really liked it because as I said, I really liked math, and this course combined math with like computer science. And then for my capstone project or like my bachelor thesis project, I worked on something that actually combined machine learning with electrical engineering. So I felt like that was like really interesting way to combine this new passion that I had with what I was studying. But then afterwards, I wasn't sure if I wanted to continue with electrical engineering or pursue machine learning more. And in the end, I applied to a few different master's programs because I thought, okay, I need more time to see what I like and what I want to do. And machine learning and data science was this new field that I was like, oh, this is so interesting and I want to pursue this further.
So you applied in a lot of different countries?
I applied in the US to a few programs, but it's very expensive to study in the US. So I think eventually I had to cross that out. And then a few different programs in Europe. This one in Stockholm at KTH, and there were a couple others. I think ETH had an interesting data science program. I don't remember the others.
What do you think is your biggest takeaway that you had from your master's?
I'm really glad I did it. I think part of the reason the reason I wanted to do something a bit more about with software towards the end of my bachelor was because I felt like, okay, even electrical engineering, it's so tied to programming, and you might build some circuit or a system or something. You have to tell it what to do, program it to do something. And I felt like I wasn't so strong in that. I mean, of course, I had done some programming as part of my courses, but I just felt like I needed to focus a bit more on that. And then during the master's, I really got a chance to do that. So I learned like new programming languages, and I felt like it was really challenging because a lot of the people had the CS background, knew computer science from their bachelor, much more than me. So it was challenging in that sense, but I loved it because then I was like really pushing myself and learning a lot about coding.
Yeah, that's so cool. I saw on LinkedIn that you have had a lot of different work experiences during your studies. So I had to write this down because it's too many things to remember. So you worked as a tutor and research assistant at NYU. You co-founded a student club to promote diversity in STEM. You were a research intern at Microsoft, and you wrote your master thesis at Spotify. And there's like even more on the list. So I'd love to maybe not go into all of them, but what are one or two experiences that have shaped you the most, you'd say? And what did you take from them?
Well, the long list just shows how undecided I was about everything and how I was just like trying things out, which I'm really happy about. But if I have to choose a couple, well, some of these were longer and some were shorter. So of course, the thesis at Spotify, that was, I think, really important and formative because it was maybe the longest like research project that I did. So I was working in a Spotify team, but had my own more research focused project. And I was looking at how patterns in how people listen to Spotify, to music on Spotify. I think that was formative because it helped me realize I don't want to do research. And I think it's just so important to try things so that you realize, okay, this is something I definitely don't want to do. Like I was happy with my project. I loved being at Spotify. I would have been very happy to stay there. But I realized that, okay, getting so deep into a subject like beyond 6 months, which is I guess what you do during a master's, would not be for me. So I don't think I could do like 3 years and just go really deep into one subject. So that was very important in that. I think another experience that I learned a lot from was when I was at Microsoft Research. There, I think it was really challenging to, during a summer internship to learn about like all the tools that they had and like then be able to produce something and that, would add value. So I think there I felt a little bit of like imposter syndrome and just like overwhelmed with learning about all their like cloud solutions and some, like the specific technologies I was working with. But I persevered and learned a lot in in that experience as well.
What advice would you give to students who also want to gain some work experience and try different things? So maybe about time management or just how to identify a good opportunity and how to land one.
Time management, yeah. I'm still working on it myself. I think I tend to overcommit, but I do think it's nice to be able to dedicate to one thing at a time. And, even if you have multiple things you're interested in, it's good to just, okay, now I'm going to try to do like an internship or like focus on this and then just go and really get into it and see if it's something for you. And then if it's not, that's useful. And then you can move on and try something else. So I do think sampling things along your studies, it's really important. What else was the question? How to get these opportunities? Well, I mean, the internet is your friend. There's a lot of things out there. And I think often you can be just overwhelmed by the sheer amount of things that are available. I think often, universities themselves have opportunities for students to get involved. So I've done some things like that, like research at the university, which was really interesting to see whether that's a path I would like to pursue. And then there's, of course, companies that have like so many internships. You can find those on the company's website. I mean, I don't think, I think it's just so incredible how much you can do during your studies and really going into these workplaces and see what it's like to work there. I think that's a really valuable experience. Cool.
And sometimes I think you just have to point out even obvious things to do, because then it's like, okay, other people also do that. It's not just magic.
Right.
Yeah. So now I would love to go into a topic that I'm super excited to talk about, and that's how you co-founded Imagi, basically right out of university, right? I saw that your thesis ended, I think, in June, and then in July you started the company. So could you tell a little bit about the story of, how you get the idea to do this, how this all came about?
Absolutely. So you mentioned actually among one of my extracurricular activities during university was to co-found or start a student organization at NYU Abu Dhabi that it was called Women Empowered in STEM. So it was about getting just more young women interested in science, technology, engineering, math, or just consider this as a path to study, which was great at a liberal arts university. There were a lot of students like me who came in clueless what they wanted to do, and then we could help see them or like make them see that this is a very valuable path. So already in university, I became very passionate about diversity and inclusion in tech. I've experienced myself both at school, but also in my internships, the lack of women in all across the board, in my classrooms, among the faculty, among people working at big tech companies. And it's just, it's really a problem because tech is shaping our future. And if we don't have diversity among the people who are creating technology, it means we're not taking everyone's perspective. We're not building solutions that address everyone's problems and so on. I don't think I'm the first to explain these problems. And there's a lot of research that shows that diversity, not just for gender, but in general, it's very important to have in teams. So I was really passionate about this already from NYU Abu Dhabi. And then during the master's, I started working with Dora, who actually I know from NYU Abu Dhabi. So we were roommates in college. And then we both came to Stockholm to study master's. And she actually did a research project as part of her master's studies in human-computer interaction, where she co-created with teenage girls a tool to teach programming to girls. And she asked me if I wanted to prototype this idea and just explore this idea a bit further than just a research project. And we started working on it together along with our studies. We applied to KTH Innovation, which is a pre-incubator at the university. So they started to encourage us to think about this idea more commercially. And it was just something I really enjoyed because I realized that, okay, of course, it's important to, support young women when they're in university, but it's actually so important to encourage girls even earlier on, right? Because so many people go to university already knowing that, okay, I want to study humanities or engineering. And it's very hard to switch, for me, switching from biology to engineering was not so hard because I had a strong background in math and interest in math already. And just I had to, was taking the same courses, switching from, being encouraged to do something else completely and then switching to engineering, I think it's a bit harder. So we wanted to work with this group, like middle school, and see why girls at that age are not being encouraged to just develop their curiosity for science, engineering, math. And there's also actually a lot of research research that shows that between the ages of 12 to 14, that's when there's a huge drop in interest for girls compared to boys. So then we wanted to focus on this problem and see what we can do to solve it.
How did you decide to go all in? Do you remember when you kind of that decision?
And actually that was when I was at Spotify. So it was I really loved being there, and I loved the team that I was working in, and I thought, I would love to work here. But then I also felt like we had this project going on, and it was something that I felt so passionate about, and I just thought, okay, Spotify is a successful company, it will be here in a few years. This idea and my willingness to work on it and this opportunity maybe won't be the same in a few years. So let's try to do this thing now and see how it goes. And then I have a strong skill set, strong, studies. So I think I can go back to working for a company, hopefully easily, if our project or startup doesn't work out.
What were some of the biggest challenges in the beginning, and then also versus what they are now with Imagi?
I think throughout, one big challenge, or like maybe the biggest challenge, is prioritization, because I think this is the biggest change from, when you run your own company or a startup to compared to being in school, for example. In school, you have exams and homework and grades, and you're being told what to do. Whereas when you're just doing something that, you're leading it, there's nobody to tell you this is right or wrong. I mean, even with startups, there's so much startup knowledge, which actually for a company, it works so well. But then you take the same, let's say, business model or the same, name it, apply it to another startup, and it doesn't work. So it's very hard to know, what to do and to prioritize what to work on, what you think will add the most value or what's the most important in that moment in time. So I think prioritization has been a challenge across the board. But then, of course, there's different challenges at every point. And I think in the beginning, we both were, like you said, out of school or during school, during our masters. So we didn't know so much what we were getting into. And there's a little bit of beauty in that. Like you have big things that feel like big challenges, but you have no idea that later you're going to have like even bigger challenges. So if you want to start a startup, don't listen to this part.
Ignore the future.
Just be blissful in your ignorance, because otherwise you won't keep going, I think if someone had told us all the things that will come later, how hard it will be, most likely we wouldn't have continued. But I think it was really exciting in the beginning when we were actually trying to build this. The initial product idea was a programmable phone case. So I love that phase in the company's history, because it had its engineering challenges, but also it was just a little bit of a funny idea. Really hard to go to market and launch a product that's a phone case that you need to use for, like, you would need to customize it for different phone models. Anyway, it was just a little silly looking back, but enjoyed building it. And now I think challenges are, we have a couple different products. We have still the hardware, which I'm happy to talk more about. We have some software solutions, and it's a lot about figuring out, who is, the end user. How do we bring them the most value? How do we, direct our go-to-market strategies to be most successful? And how do we build a product to bring them the most value? So it's a lot of these big questions, which are really fun to think about. And then when we answered those, we can go and try to build things. So it's always kind of a cycle.
Were there any more direction changes throughout the life of Imagi so far, besides the phone case to programmable?
So we decided, we realized that, okay, the form factor of a phone case was maybe not so feasible for us with resources of a very small startup. So we just packaged it into a Tamagotchi-like keychain, or something that you can wear on your backpack. And, when we started the company, and now too, like, the mission is really to encourage young girls to learn coding, to learn about technology, to develop this curiosity and interest. But we saw that actually the product works very well, not just for girls, also for boys. So maybe not a pivot or a big change, but a shift has been to use it a lot more in co-ed situations. So recently we recently, or almost a year ago, we started working a lot more with schools. So this has been a big change from kind of a business model perspective. And it's very exciting because there's kids around the world that should learn coding using different tools. And we're there to provide more diversity to the ways they can learn.
How does it look like when you work with the school? The process, what happens?
Well, we're still in the early phases. So far, we've tested a few things. So our team is mostly like English speaking. So we've been working mostly with international schools. So with the international schools, the product was used by the teachers and we were selling to the teachers. But now we're working with public school districts as well, where you have multiple schools. Sometimes it's actually just one school, but sometimes it's hundreds of schools organized into one district. And then you have decision makers at the district level. So they decide what, for example, technology or like tools they use in the classroom. So we sell directly to them. And then still it's the teachers using the product with the students in the classroom. I mean, the product or, what we do hasn't changed. Like we want to empower girls and kids in general to like learn coding in a way that's fun and engaging for them, and to see that, coding is not always just about like robots. Like you can use it to express yourself, creative, but then also to recognize that actually it's important to also empower the teachers because they are supposed to teach these skills and they themselves don't really have the necessary training. So it's just kind of like an additional interesting layer to the problem that I've really enjoyed working with.
What have been maybe some of your proudest moments in working with this or in working in Mud?
There's been a lot. I mean, I think always the best moments are when you see like happy users and happy customers. So whether that a teacher saying that, oh, I've never like taught computer science, but now I feel empowered to do it with my students, and like I tell them, okay, I don't know this, but we're in this together, we're gonna figure it out, so like just like modeling this like solution oriented mindset, like do this, and which is so important I think for teachers, or having teachers say that, oh, I had these girls in my classrooms who said that they hate coding, or like what is coding, and then after a few lessons with Imagi they love coding and they're so happy to do it. I mean, that's just so valuable. We had a few of our earliest users, so these were mostly girls, because back then we were more focusing on girls who just found our app on the App Store and downloaded it and like learned coding on their own. There's an in-app community in the app, so you can share your coding projects and like look at other people's code. So there's this one girl who later became one of our like teenage girl ambassadors. She just learned to code by looking at other people's projects, and it was so crazy to just see that can work. Like you just download an app and then you join this community and learn from others, and it's these like stories here and there are really heartwarming. I think also the support we've been getting. I mean, I didn't move to Sweden to start a company. I moved here to do a master's in machine learning, and the ecosystem here and the community has been so welcoming and helpful that it allowed me and my co-founder, who was also not Swedish, to start a company and be successful here. It really means a lot.
How many people do you now have at Imagi?
We were still pretty small, actually. We are 6 people full-time, but we have a few interns, some part-time and full-time, and then we also work with a few part-time consultants and some full-time consultants. Right now it's mostly part-time.
Do you have any advice for engineers looking to start their own business? Like, I might want to do that in the future, so I'm very interested in your response. Maybe someone who either doesn't know exactly what kind of business to start, or has an idea but doesn't know if it's the right idea to do.
Okay, let me start with if you have an idea.
Yeah.
I think, because I guess that's what I can relate to the most, because that's how I started. So I had an idea. It had nothing to do actually with my studies at the time, so with machine learning. So for me, that was the hard decision. Like, okay, I have this passion, which of course it's related to engineering because it's about getting more women in the field, but it's not really directly related to my technical background. So what do I do? Like, do I pursue that? But I think at the end of the day, for me, it matters so much to work on something that I, truly believe in and that I'm very passionate about. And I think for when you start up a startup or a company, this is very important because it will be hard. And if you don't have a strong why or like a strong reason to do it, it will be hard to stick through with it. Then, but that being said, I think you can find a strong why in different ways. So for me, there was this very clear problem that I wanted to solve, and we didn't really know how to solve it. So there's been a lot of iteration. But I think there's a lot of, successful stories of people who meet, for example, you meet someone else who's working on an interesting problem and you want to, kind of help them, and then it becomes your problem as well. So there's, I think, a lot of, especially in like bigger cities, there's so many of these hubs, like entrepreneurship hubs and programs for people who want to start something, but maybe they don't have an idea yet. Like in Stockholm, I'm not advertising, I'm not being paid for this, but I don't know, Antler, for example, it's a program like that. So I know a lot of people who go there as solo, I want to start something, but I don't know what. And then you kind of find other people and find problems that you're passionate about and work on. And then there was also a question about whether you're not sure if it's going to work or if it's a good idea. So to that, I think it's just very important to not keep it a secret. And, if it's something that you have, like, let's say a prototype or even just the idea, like talk about it to the people who maybe are your end users or the people that you think you're solving the problem for, and get feedback, even if it's super early. Like if you are not ashamed to tell your idea or to show the solution, it means you've waited too long. Like if you're like, oh, here's this beautiful thing that I made, and you think it's ready to be shown, then it's too late. You waited way too long, and most likely it's not something that is actually gonna work.
Okay. So it should be like something you're like, I don't really want to show it, it's not ready at all, but like I'll show it.
Yeah, and get feedback from people, because honestly, ideas are cheap. And I don't know who said this, probably many people, but it's really the effort that it takes to bring an idea to life. So I think in the beginning, we didn't really internalize this. So, you hesitate. I'm like, oh, but I have this brilliant idea. Probably so many other people have it. So it's important to just like talk about it, get feedback on it, improve it, and then start, building it. And then too, keep improving it based on feedback, because you're not going to come up with this brilliant idea just by sitting on your own and not telling anyone about it.
None of that advice. Now, I'd love to go a little bit into your role as a CTO, so Chief Technology Officer and co-founder. What are some skills that you need as CTO and co-founder that maybe you don't typically build as an engineer, and how did you develop them?
That's an excellent question. So I think the interesting thing is about startups is that you have this entity that you call startup, even when it's like one person or two people, and even when it's hundreds of people. And typically the roles that you have in a startup from the beginning and also late is CEO, CTO. So, but these roles look very different at the beginning and later down the line. So of course, in the beginning as a CTO, you're probably an engineer who is in charge of like building the product, and it's probably just you building things. So it's very much related to the skills that you've probably gained as an engineer. But as things evolve, and if the startup is successful or like evolving, growing, then of course the role changes a lot. And something that I've learned is that actually, the role of CTO means very different things in different startups. So in some cases, you might have someone who is purely focused on the technology, like software architecture or like hardware architecture. I mean, really like kind of high level, but focused so much on the technology. Then in some cases, you have someone who's more also wearing kind of like a product manager hat, let's say, or someone who's talking a lot to also to the end user and trying to understand the problem and like transforming that into like requirements and what needs to be built. So it really can differ. And I think it depends, of course, a lot on what you're actually building. If you have like a very tech heavy solution or not. Like in our case, of course, there's software, there's hardware. We also provide curriculum to teach programming. So me as CTO, I actually oversee all of that. And I mean, right now we're a very small team. So I do everything from even like design and customer discovery. So like talking to teachers and kids and taking that feedback, prioritizing what I think we should build, then sometimes writing code and building things, and then doing user testing, getting feedback again, so I'm involved in like the whole cycle. We're not working on the hardware right now, but when we did that, I was also working with that and kind of overseeing that entire process, working with the product designer, mechanical engineer, myself on the electrical engineering side, at least in the beginning, until we got someone else to help with that, and talking to the manufacturer. So it's been, like really so many different things, which I love, because as I said earlier, I realized during my master's that I can't get too deep into something. So for me, this has been amazing to be able to do, all kinds of different work. And in some cases, it can look very different. So this is what it looks like for me being a CTO. Definitely, I've used skills that I learned, like hard skills that I learned in my studies, especially from like electrical engineering. And now we're planning to add some AI to the product. So I'm probably going to use some of my knowledge from machine learning as well. But I think I've just had to learn a lot of new things. And I think as an engineer, I'm really hoping that the most important thing you learn is how to learn. Like, I think a good engineering education should really teach you that, because we see now like technology changing so fast, right? So like it's guaranteed that whatever we learn in school will be outdated pretty quickly. So we need to just be able to continue learning. And I think that's a skill I've learned in school, but then I've kind of had to show up and show that, okay, I can do this and be able to learn new things on the job.
Can you talk about or like paint a picture of your workplace? So where do you work? What are you wearing? And what do you do during a typical day?
As a founder, I get to decide, I guess, what kind of company we have. So I love that. And I think that's very important to, build a culture that people enjoy, and it's a place where it's nice to work. So we're very flexible in many regards. Just to give a very quick overview. So we have an office because we have a hardware product. So of course we have, inventory, we need tools, equipment to create the product, to repair, to whatnot. But we've been remote friendly from the beginning, because actually we've had people involved, who helped us with like certain projects, or, who worked with us remotely from day one. Even actually when we started the company, my co-founder Dora was doing, like an accelerator program in Chile, and like I was here in Stockholm. So we've been remote first and remote friendly from the beginning. And even now I like that. I go to the office maybe half, like 2-3 days a week, and then I work from home 2-3 days a week. And I really like this mix because it gives you flexibility. Then the office is pretty small and cozy. So as I said, we're not a really big team. It's very colorful. There is pixel art everywhere, and we recently, I'm so happy the team did this. I had nothing to do with it, but we bought a huge beanbag with our brand, and it's just like so fun to sit in it and, I don't know, chill, take a break or work. Anyway, so it's a colorful office, and I really like to work from there. We're very flexible, or like casual when it comes to outfit. I mean, sometimes I go to work in my like yoga outfit, and then I take a break during the day and go to a yoga class. So we're flexible in that as well. If you want to go for a lunch run or a lunch swim now in the summer, you can do that and work a bit later. So we're very flexible in terms of when you work, where you work, how you work, what you wear. And I think that's important in a startup. We'll see how it develops as we grow, but we have this opportunity to do whatever we want. So we try to keep it nice and casual.
And then focus on like the kind of work you do. Like, what is it that you actually do at work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So no 2 days look the same. It really depends, on the phase of the company, on the like current focus. For example, a few months back, we had like a big project to pay some technical debt. So I was doing a lot of coding as well, just like cleaning up some part of one of our apps. Now these weeks, actually this past week that just passed, I was helping write the grant application for some funding. Some days I do a lot of customer interviews, so try to block and like combine, so I have similar types of work in a bigger chunk, because I think one of the difficulties of doing so many different things is like the context switching. So I do try to kind of combine things, but I'm not so successful. If I have to describe, it's really hard to describe one day, because no one day looks the same.
What is your favorite and least favorite part of being a CTO?
I think there's multiple things that I like, and there's some things that I don't like, or I've struggled to kind of come to terms with. So I think for me, the understanding that I will be doing not so much engineering was a little bit difficult in the beginning, or I think I'm still in that process of understanding what my title or my job or my role is, and of course to some extent I can define it, and I can say, okay, well, I want to do 50% of my time like coding. So it's really up to me, but I think it's been an interesting journey to just understand what this role is, and sometimes it's been tough. I think it's hard because as I guess CTO means you are like the most senior, and of course I don't feel as senior as someone who has worked in the industry for 20 years, so it's a bit tough. But I think as we grow, of course I will be able to hire those people, and then maybe I will still like learn from them, even though I will be their boss. boss. So I'm excited about that part. I think it's really cool, actually, that I get to work and choose who I work with and hire people and go out and like find the best team. And I really love that. I think that's so awesome to be able to build a team that's like passionate about something that I dreamt up, and then we go out and work on it together. That's really humbling too. That's maybe one of my favorite parts, being able to build an awesome team and have them work with me on this mission.
What is one misconception about maybe your job or industry or even the company that most people get wrong?
I think a misconception about being a startup founder, if I can talk about that, is I think there's this view that you have to just, work really hard, 80-hour weeks or something like that. And, to some extent, there's a little bit of truth in that, because you do want to work hard. You feel like it's your dream. And I will lie if I say that I didn't do that. Like in the beginning, I was just like, okay, I wake up, this is what I do, weekends, yes. But eventually you have to realize that, okay, that's not sustainable. And especially if it's something you're passionate about, it's harder for you to realize that, okay, you're tired and you need a break. So it's very important to learn to build this balance of how much you work, even if you love it, every moment of it, and you don't consider it a job, because I think that's really key to being able to do this long term. I don't think the most successful people are the ones, this is the misconception that you have to like be there, every day, every weekend. I think it's more about pacing yourself and running a marathon, not a sprint.
What are your career goals going forward? Well, let's say in 5 years, where do you see yourself?
I have no idea what's going to happen in 5 years, and it's very exciting. I've realized that things take time. So I think I really hope I will be still with Imagi, building Imagi and continuing to grow in my technical ability, but also leadership, and just be able to build an awesome company.
There's something that you would like for the company to have achieved by then, or what it would look like at that point?
I'm really excited about this new focus with schools. So we have some ambitious hopes about hitting tens of thousands of working with tens of thousands, but maybe in 5 years it's more than that, actually. Hundreds of thousands or millions of features and millions of students. And ultimately what I'm really excited about is getting more girls interested. So I think within a 5-year time frame we will be able to do a lot of interesting impact measurement, because a lot of the things that we do will have results later. So seeing how many of the girls that learned coding with us today will be like maybe applying to or like graduating from high school and going to university and studying computer science. So some sort of study like that, and seeing the results of that will be very exciting.
I'm really excited to see where it goes. I'd love to end with a round of rapid fire questions if you're afraid. So just say the first thing that comes to mind, please.
Okay.
What is the best business book you've ever read?
I will say Grit by Angela Duckworth, but I don't think this is a business book. I think this is more of a personal development book, but I think it applies a lot to startups or founding a company, because it's all about how much effort it takes to really get somewhere and have an achievement. I think one way to summarize it, she has this thing she explains that talent multiplied by effort gives you skill, and then skill multiplied by effort gives you achievement. So, it's not enough to be talented. You really have to put in the effort for a long time in order to get somewhere. So I think that's, I really could relate to that. And I'm I think I have that mindset both at work and in my personal life.
What is a stereotype about engineers that you think is not true?
I think engineers are typically considered to be analytical, and then because of that, not creative or not artistic, which I don't think is true, because actually I think in order to solve any problem, you need creativity, right? You need to think outside the box. I mean, no matter what kind of engineering problem it is, you need to have a way to think about it creatively. So I think engineers are super creative, not maybe painters, but creativity. And, it's not the same as, visual or artistic feeling. It's about how you solve a problem.
I love that answer. I fully agree. What surprised you the most about starting a business?
I think how much people can help if you ask for it. So I think it's been, we started this being clueless, really. And we've been able to learn so much because of the people around. And of course, it's a matter of you asking for help, but just having that humbleness that, okay, recognizing the things that you don't don't know and going out and finding people to help you. It's important. And if you do that, then you can get really far. So this is something I guess I never thought about before.
Which project, be it big or small, have you thought about doing but haven't started yet?
Well, we have a lot of ideas at work about projects, but I think one from like maybe personally, it's a little bit tied to work because I would love to create, I don't know when this will happen, a programmable LED cape. For festivals. So we actually have a few of these LED capes in the office, which we worn to certain events, to, you know, like big conferences and they're very noticeable, but it's also something you can wear to a festival or a party. Anyway, and there are these multicolor LED light, but they just have a few animations and that's it. So I would love to make one that you program yourself. So then you can do whatever you want on like any animation. So it's a little bit tied, of course, to our product, the Imagi Charm, but in a very different format and for a different purpose, not to teach people coding, but more like, or actually, why not? You can learn coding with that, but wearing it as a cape.
Maybe like a different target group.
Exactly. It's not for children. I think that, although honestly, children would probably love it too. Yeah. So, you know what? I think maybe this is a new product line.
Yeah, I think so too. And final question, I love to ask this one. If you had to totally abandon your current career and start a completely different one, what would you do?
Well, there's so many cool things. I don't know. Can I still be within engineering, or
we can cheat a little bit because you're a founder, I guess?
Yeah. No, but okay. So there is actually one field that I think is just incredible, and it does tie back to an interest that I had, biology. I think the advances that have been happening in like genetics and gene modification are just mind-blowing, and it's almost like, you know, it's coding, but you're not coding computers, you're like coding life, and I can't even grasp what that means. And I think if I couldn't be in engineering, then I would maybe want to do that, even though I feel like to work with like genetic modification, you do probably a lot of coding actually. But anyway, so everything ties back to engineering at the end.
It's been super cool to have you on. And for the people that after watching this or listening to this want to learn more about you, or maybe about Imagi, or connect with you to ask you a question, where can they go?
I'm on all socials, Twitter, Instagram. I'm at Beatrice. Actually, Imagi is more active on socials, so feel free to get in touch through that. And yeah, happy to answer any questions. Always excited to talk about my journey and if it can help anyone.
Nice. We'll link everything as well. And yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Wow. So many great things we talked about. I think my favorite part was when Beatrice talked about why it's too late to show someone your project once you're proud of it. Whether you're working on a personal project or a university project or work project, I think it's really easy to want to keep it to yourself until you think it's ready. We don't like to show something that is still a work in progress and that still has obvious flaws that we're aware of, especially if we're a little bit perfectionist. I definitely grappled with this a lot during university, and I constantly have to remind myself and force myself even to share my work in progress with other people to get feedback and to get their help before I put too much time and effort into it. So let this be your reminder to show your current work in progress to someone and get their feedback. So thank you again, Beatrice Ionascu, for coming onto the show and sharing your story. You can find the show notes for this episode on freshengineer.io/podcast/9, including everything we talked about today. Next week, I will talk to a mechanical engineer turned self-taught data science manager about taking control of your career, one small skill you can learn to boost your career, and the unexpected career benefits of having a YouTube channel as an engineer. Subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts so you don't miss it. And here's already a little sneak peek.
Estimating engineer, what it is you basically get a set of construction drawings or blueprints of a layout of a building, and you basically count everything in the building and apply a price to it. Companies will pay you a lot of money to estimate how much projects cost before they go and invest that money. So it's a good field, and it's just glossed over in college. And there's no class on it. They don't talk about cost at all in engineering. We're like, oh, design it. They don't talk about like the cost impacts of design. It's baffling.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fresh Engineer podcast, where fresh engineers share their stories.